Hello everyone, it's me, Chris, also known as Lord Cirque. I'm starting up a little new series called another kind of discussion topic video, and I'm joined by one of my really good friends who I've actually known for almost a decade. Introduce yourself, buddy.
Yeah, my name is CountKaos, or aka Lars, as my real name is. And yeah, I have been on Chris/Lord Cirque for, decade. Almost two, maybe?
You do know a decade is 10 years, right?
Yeah. But still, mid-20s.
Yeah, true. We're getting old.
She's the old one.
Hey, 3 weeks, it doesn't count.
It counts.
No, it doesn't.
It counts.
No, it doesn't, Chaos.
It counts.
Okay, anyway, enough with our bickering. We had actually been talking a little bit, and we've had countless conversations over Skype about several different Star Wars topics, and many of them have actually been repeating themselves, and we kind of thought that it might have been a good idea to actually bring some of these discussions to YouTube. Most of them are basically just either evaluating some scenes from the Clone Wars series or the movies, maybe looking at some of the lightsaber battles, but mainly it's actually been about ships in the Star Wars universe. Primarily ships around the Republic, the Galactic Republic and Clone Wars era, as well as Galactic Civil War and New Republic era.
The old canon for most people.
Yeah, the extended universe or expanded universe. So we actually started talking about a very typical design that we see in Star Wars. It's probably one of the most recognizable ships apart from an X-Wing and the Millennium Falcon, being the Imperial Star Destroyer classes. Both Imperial 1 and 2, and also the Executor of the, Executor class. You see, one of the funny things about it is that while they have some really awesome designs, they're, in a practical sense, the designs are actually really horrible. What do you think, buddy? What could you say about the design of a Star Destroyer, for example?
Well, you can see on the Star Destroyer that is, with its wedge shape, it is of course made for combat forwardly. The design is basically made to frontal assault, which of course makes it not that good at a broadside battle, because it cannot fire all its gun to the left or the right, or even behind it. There is no coverage on the behind.
Well, that's kind of true, but I mean, from some standpoint, it all depends on how you use the Star Destroyers, because they were meant for frontal head-on assault, which they really excelled at. And so I think it mostly depends on what role you actually decide to put the Imperial Star Destroyers in.
That is true. The design is of course for frontal combat, but as we know have seen by the Rebel Alliance, they mostly use smaller ships, which are faster, like the X-Wing and that, and an X-Wing can most likely not be hit that well by Imperial Star Destroyer's main weapons.
Actually, the turbo lasers on an Imperial-class Star Destroyer aren't the most accurate ones. I don't have the exact estimations for it, but I would argue that the turbo lasers on a Venator-class Star Destroyer is far more accurate.
There I would agree. If we see back in some of the Clone Wars episodes, we can actually see the main battery shooting down to, what is it called? Vulture droids?
Yeah, vulture droids, yeah.
I can't remember the episode. I think it's the one where they assault Ryloth, where Ahsoka goes into the trap and they are just swarmed by them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We see a few of them being shot down.
Yeah, I think that's actually I think the episode is called Storm of Ryloth or something like that. It's something with assault or storm.
Storm over Ryloth.
That's right.
So yeah, you were correct.
Yeah, it's around episode 20 in the first season.
Yes, it is. Episode 20 is the end, so I don't think that's the right one.
I thought there were 22 episodes in the first season.
I can't remember.
Well, I think it's the battle on Ryloth is a 3-episode arc, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, because the battle above And the last two are underground, of course.
Yes, that's true. And then we have the very last one with Cad Bane capturing the Senators, which is episode 22.
Yeah, that's the special episode.
Yeah. All right, but we're getting off topic. You see, as we already took care of, the Star Destroyers are pretty much excelling in frontal combat, and in frontal assaults and head-up engagements. But as soon as, for example, fighters or bombers or even bigger ships like corvettes and frigates, as soon as they're trying to outflank the Star Destroyers, first of all, they're not very maneuverable, which we've seen in Empire Strikes Back, where 3 of them are colliding from just hunting the Millennium Falcon. And while the Star Destroyer does manage to get a hit on the Millennium Falcon in the movie, it's still unlikely because they're meant for slugging out damage. I mean, they have 60 heavy ion cannons and 60 heavy turbo lasers, but considering that a Majestic-class heavy cruiser from the Expanded Universe and New Republic's new fleet class program, then they simply don't stack up. I mean, they're what they lack in accuracy, they basically make up for in numbers, which is not the only flaw about the design, I would say.
No. Also, as far as I know, the weapons are not focused anywhere on the ship. Not like the 8 main batteries up on the sides of the bridge. Oh, not the bridge, but the main superstructure.
4
and if we see back at what you said about the Millennium Falcon, the Millennium Falcon was not hit by one of those cannons, because I'm pretty sure they would have made more damage.
Oh, they would have torn it apart.
Maybe not torn apart, but at least taken down the shield and make a really big dent.
But remember, these were Imperial Class 2 Star Destroyers. They had 4 octuple turbo lasers on each side, and if all those 8 laser blasts had hit at once, they would have torn the Millennium Falcon apart.
That is true.
Even with the shields up and focused on the rear area of the ship, they would have torn through it. I mean, Star Destroyers are named Star Destroyers because they can also completely obliterate a planet. I mean, one Star Destroyer can basically, in less than half an hour, make a complete planet inhabitable.
That is true. Orbital bombardment.
Yeah. So it's a very dangerous ship, it's a very powerful ship at that, but it's definitely not without its drawbacks, and I would say that its cons are definitely worse than the pros.
With that I have to agree.
Yeah, because also if you look at the design itself, I mean, if we take a look at the Executor, for example,
which is essential, it's just a big or an enlarged Star Destroyer.
Oh yes, it's nothing but that. I mean, if you look at them, they have a very, very similar bridge tower.
It is the same tower. That I can say about KDY. KDY used the same command bridge on all their large model of starships. The Mandator, the Imperial class, the Executor class, the Acertor class, the Bellator class, they all shared the same command bridge.
Well, then I just learned something new. I thought they were similar, but not exactly the same.
They are the same. That is, I can't remember the total description, but I know the Acclimator bridge are used on smaller cruisers and upward, like the Acclimator, and then they changed it over to the T1 version when they got into capital ships.
Ah, well, that makes sense. So, but what is the main weakness of a Star Destroyer apart from outflanking?
Let's see. It has open hangars, of course, and we can see that from the description of the Mediator class Star Cruiser, that it or Battle Cruiser, sorry, that it can not hold that a Mediator can hold the same or hold a detonation from nuclear bombs, but the same amount would simply tear apart the Imperial class.
Yes, that actually happens during the Yushan Bong War, where they bring an atomic bomb into the open hangar of the Mediator class. And it basically blows up, and it renders the hangar. It renders the hangar completely. Well, you can't use it anymore. It's completely wrecked. But apart from that, the ship is just a bit shaken and everything. Basically, basically in the same way that an X-wing made a strafe run on the Death Star, where you see everything shaking a little bit and some troops maybe losing their balance and such. But in essence, the ship was just fine. It had just made one of its hangars. One of the hangars couldn't be used anymore. But also, I have another thing that I would like to point out, which I see as an especially huge Achilles heel of the Star Destroyer design: the bridge tower.
Yeah, that is exposed as hell.
Exactly. And the problem is, I mean, we saw a 19-kilometer ship. That's about 12 miles, 12 to 13 mile long ship, was taken down by one A-wing.
Yeah, and that is just an interceptor.
One little A-wing. Okay, granted, the reason why the Executor in that battle also went down was very circumstantial, but it's still, in a way, it's kind of a massive flaw.
A really big flaw.
Something that, for example, we do not see to the same extent at all in, for example, the Mon Calamari ships, or even the new Resurgent class Star Destroyers or battle cruisers of the First Order in the new movies that have just come out. I mean, there the bridge is a lot more sunken down in the hull, and while you do have some really good views from the bridge, they're not as exposed, and they've really removed a massive weak spot there, which the Imperial Star Destroyer and the Executor class does have.
Yeah, and also if we look into the Legends material of the Republic's Nebula class Star Destroyer, they also removed the bridge and put it down into the hull. Like the Mon Calamari. The only exception by Mon Calamari, I would say, is of course the MC-90 with its big panorama view.
Yes, but still the bridge is as sunken down in the hull as it possibly can. I mean, if you look at the Home 1, for example, it also has a tiny command bridge structure sticking up from the hull, actually pretty highly above the hull, so you can really get a nice panoramic view. I mean, it does of course give you some superior visuals over the situation that you're in, and it does of course also offer you some superior view, so you can pretty much have a much better view of the battlefield itself, and you don't have to only trust the sensors in the ships. But I don't know if I would actually weigh that as a pro over a con, especially not when you see how big the bridge structures are in the Star Destroyer.
I have to agree. If as far as I can see, the designs of the Imperial class comes also from the Old Republic's design of the Harrow class Star Destroyer or Dreadnought.
Oh yes.
From back then, because that also has not as an exposed bridge, I would say, but it's still more exposed than I see on like the Republic's what is they called yet? Valor class battle cruisers.
Yeah, I think it was Valor. Yeah, I haven't researched too much into the Old Republic ships, which is actually a shame because they have some really nice ships. But
yeah, but they don't have the like we see on the Imperial class with big towers and that. No, they are more or less sunken into the ship. But we could also see an example on like the Munificent frigate or the Providence class carrier/destroyer of the CIS.
Oh yes.
They also have more or less exposed bridges.
Yes, and even there you actually see Anakin at some point using his fighter to pretty much just shoot the glass on the bridge, and he basically destroys an entire Munificent frigate with 2 laser blasts from a little fighter. I mean, there again we have one of those open bridges that are very, very exposed, and once again we have the problem that shoot the bridge and basically you have already crippled the ship.
Yeah, if we can look at most of the ships, they only have one command bridge if they're not big enough. The Executor is of course an exception.
But that's again because it's 12 miles long, maybe even 13 miles long. I don't have the exact number, but it's around that.
But yeah, such a big ship would have 1 or 2 additional command bridges to be sure we don't lose it.
Well, they actually did. They had 3. The Executor class had 3 command bridges. The problem was just that by then the battle had moved so close to the Death Star that the Executor was also caught in the gravitational field of the Death Star, which also meant that the crew on the Executor on the 2 remaining bridges, they simply didn't have the time to stabilize the ship before it was caught, before it was fully caught by the gravitational field, and by then it was too late, so they could pretty much do nothing except for heading for the escape pods as fast as possible. But we all saw how that went.
Yeah, they didn't really have time for that.
Mm-mm. So what I'm basically just thinking is that, in general, the Star Destroyers, they have a really awesome design. Personally, I really like them, though they're not my favorites. People who have watched the Versus videos I've made have also seen that my favorites are Mon Calamari ships, but in general, they have a really awesome design, and I think the command bridges are also so big and towering for the purpose of intimidation.
Yeah, that is the one rule for the Empire, intimidation, or the Tarkin doctrine.
Yes, ruled by fear tactics.
Yeah, or rule for terror.
Mm-hmm.
As it really says.
Oh yes. Actually, that is very reminiscent of a certain dictator from Austria who later ruled Germany about 70 years ago. Then again, George Lucas has also said that he actually based the Galactic Empire upon that one nation, which I think everyone know. I think everyone knows the name of that nation.
Yes.
Yes,
the rule through terror is terrible, but you could see it was quite effective, at least in the... How many years was it?
Are you talking about the 1930s
I'm talking about
or the Star Wars universe?
Star Wars right now.
Alright, good.
Yeah, because we could see it at... of course, the Star Destroyer, or at least the Imperial class, was designed during the Clone Wars and also used during the Clone Wars. We of course have no sources that says that it was used, because we have not seen it in the series, but it has been mentioned in novels and probably also the cartoon, no, not the cartoons, what are they called, the books.
The comics?
Yeah, the comics, thank you. Where we see and can hear that the Imperial class, also called the Imperator class at that point, was used during the Clone Wars, and they were slowly slowing down the Venator production to produce more of the new class.
I mean...
Because they were better for space combat, where the Venator was more of a multi-purpose
ship. It was a multi-purpose, and considering the fact how fast it was, how powerful it actually was with its main weapons, because it actually could almost rival a Imperial 1 class Star Destroyer with those 8 heavy dual turbo lasers. That speaks volumes about how powerful those guns were. The problem with the Venator was just that it was really good at everything, but it was no expert at anything.
Yeah, but as we can see, it is a multi-purpose ship, of course, carrying fighters and also troopers into battle. As we can see, it is one of the biggest ships that could still enter the atmosphere without problems.
Oh yes. You actually see in episode 3, just as they're preparing for the assault on Kashyyyk, just before the droids are coming, you can actually see a clip in the background where you see that a Venator has landed on the planet.
Yeah, and you can also see it when they are loading up the troops and the Juggernauts and AT-APs on Coruscant, that they are standing on the ground.
Yes. That is true.
So yes, it was a pure multi-purpose ship, while the Imperator/Imperial class was a dedicated warship.
Yes. So that's what I'm kind of hinting at, that the Venator was a jack-of-all-trades ship. It was really good at everything, but it was not the best at anything either.
Oh, that's true.
But in general, I would say the Venator was definitely a much more successful design than the Imperial class. I mean, sure, the Imperial class had its perks, and it definitely had the superior firepower, but that was only in a close-range slugging match. Otherwise, it also had some thicker armor, but when it came to fighter carrying capacity, when it came to, for example, accuracy, when it came to speed, maneuvering, then it simply lagged behind.
Agreed.
And also the Venator, unlike, for example, the Imperial class, which is actually pretty... That's actually, not many people are aware of this, but I, at least in my sources, couldn't find anywhere where it said that an Imperial class had point defense cannons used for anti-fighter duty. Even the Venator had those.
As far as I know about that source, that is true that there is no point defense cannons. It actually relied on its TIE fighter complement to fend off starfighters.
Mm-hmm. But if you look
or the corvettes.
Oh yes, but if you look at the 1 mile long or 1,600 meter long Imperial Star Destroyers, you actually see that they only have 72 fighters in them, and that also includes the TIE bomber. However, specific numbers on which TIE classes are not really available anywhere that I have been able to find. But I'm assuming that there would at least be 4 TIE fighter squadrons, 2 TIE bomber squadrons, and yeah. But already there, it would pretty much be a full complement because it only has 6 squadrons of 12 fighters each. That's 72 fighters, meaning 12 fighters in every single squadron. Compare
That's
that
a lot.
to no, it's actually not. If you compare that to the Venator, the Venator had just under 400 fighters in it. Actually, about over 400. And the Venator was almost half a kilometer shorter. In a way, I honestly feel that I really don't know what they have done to the Star Destroyer to make it the way it is, but I just find that there are many ships both before and after that are better than it. I mean, sure, the Star Destroyer does have its perks and its... Let's say it like this, I mean, the Star Destroyer would not have been successful had it not had this huge intimidation factor that it had. But the problem was that it just had too many weak spots that many people quickly figured out how to exploit.
Yes. What was it? There was over 4,000 errors in the Imperial class design.
Yes. In total, it said that there was over 4,000 errors. It said so on Wikipedia, at least.
Yeah, they were just waiting to be exploited.
Mm-hmm. And I mean... even a Venator having point defense cannon speaks volumes about how well it can defend itself from fighter attacks.
Yeah.
Plus,
but of course it also had fast tracking main cannons.
Oh yes, those huge DBY 827 heavy dual turbo laser turrets, because the Venator was one of my favorite ships and still is. So yeah, I remembered that.
Understandably.
That's pretty much the only thing I remember from it, and the length. But apart from that, the what's it called? Those huge turbo lasers, those huge dual turbo lasers, could spin a full 360 degrees in just 3 seconds.
Yeah, and in their fast tracking mode.
Mm-hmm. And fast tracking, well, that basically means that they had decreased their firepower to shoot a lot faster and also be able to shoot down fighters and bombers.
Yeah.
Were the point defense cannons not sufficient to do so?
But also back to the Imperial class, as far as I know, it didn't have that fast tracking mode or any other modes. It just had the sluggish mode it normally used for firing ships.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, you can also set up that because it has, quadruple guns. It had 4 guns on each side 4 times.
Octuple, actually. At least on the Imperial 2.
Yeah, I'm talking about the one right now.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just a slugging match for it.
Mm-hmm.
Where it normally would come out on the best side against most ships, of course.
Mm-hmm.
There are, of course, newer designs like the New Republic classes later on, and also the Mon Calamaris designs.
Oh yes, but many of the Mon Calamari designs were actually older ships that had just been converted from either deep space exploration or civilian luxury liners into fighting ships.
Yeah, repurposed civilian ships, like many other Rebellion designs or ships were at that point in the beginning, at least.
Yeah. But the Mon Calamari actually didn't enter the Rebel Alliance until fairly late.
That's true. In the beginning, they only had CR-90s and Nebulon B frigates.
Oh yes, the EF-75, 76 Nebulon B-class frigates, yeah. And those were actually made for the Empire.
Yeah,
funny.
funny.
Made for escorts. You can actually see, if you go to Wikipedia to read about it, they just under the title of the ship, there are usually some quotes from characters, either from movies, games, or comics, where you see that some general there says, just for once, I would like that we actually shoot down a ship that was not ours.
Yeah, we didn't pay for.
Mm-hmm. So, on that front, you could say that... In that front, you could say that... yeah, and I kind of lost it.
Well, you can see on that the Empire, of course, had a lot of resources. That's also why they built so many Star Destroyers. I think at the peak of the Empire's time, they had 25,000 of the Imperial 1 and 2 classes.
Mm-hmm.
Which were just ready for action anytime.
Yes.
And they had quite a lot of admirals at the same time, of course.
Yes, although not all of them had... Although not many of them were very competent. I mean, we could just see how Darth Vader handled Imperial officers.
That is true. There's also one point you can put into the Imperial classes, cons and pros.
Oh, yes.
Depending on the commander, they were either good or they were easy to kill.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can take Admiral Thrawn, both from now and from the Legacy era. He's just an awesome commander.
And in Star Wars Rebels, even though I begrudgingly have to admit that.
Well, that is the new canon, so...
that's what they call it.
Yeah, that's what they call it.
I still see it as... Not to bash the new canon or anything, but I still see it as something that the fans have to make up for themselves.
I have to agree on that. I am also a huge Legacy fan. I actually call what most people see as Legacy today as canon, while the new movies and Rebels and everything, that is Legacy for me.
You mean Legends?
Yeah, Legends.
But that's not the only thing. I mean, there's actually a very significant scene in Star Wars Episode 5 Empire Strikes Back. That is in the asteroid field itself, where they're still trying to catch the Millennium Falcon. You see a brief clip with an Imperial Star Destroyer in the asteroid field, and then you see a massive asteroid just smashing into it. Right after that, on the command bridge of the Executor, you see a hologram of one of the Imperial officers disappearing. So that speaks volumes about how vulnerable, once again, that command tower actually is.
Yeah, it's exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And as we see with the Executor, because they share the same command tower, they have their shields up in the domes together with their communication arrays. If they fall, then of course you lose the whole shield for the bridge.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You see that as soon as the A-wings actually fire loose on that one shield dome there, you instantly hear it in the command bridge of the Executor. Sorry about that. You instantly hear it in the command bridge of the Executor where they say, "Sir, we've lost our bridge deflector shields."
Yeah, where Piet then tries to make up for it by commanding intensive firepower in front of the command tower.
Mm-hmm. And then there you briefly see two fighters, being an A-wing and an X-wing, in between those buildings on the city-like structure of the Executor. Those little laser cannons you see there are actually point defense cannons that the Executor over the Imperial class actually does have. The X-wing was not fast enough to evade the point defense cannons, but the A-wings were.
Yeah. That's where we see the last surviving smashing into the bridge.
Actually, that was because he had been damaged and he couldn't do anything to repair his ship, so he thought, you know what? Screw it.
Yeah, let me just go out with a bang.
Mm-hmm. The fact that he then ended up taking down the whole Executor, that was something different.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he thought he would do that, but, well, he did it.
Yes, he did. So, well, points to him.
Yeah, big points to him. One lonely pilot smashing down a big ship that the whole fleet couldn't take down.
Actually, it had been intensively fired upon by all the Mon Calamar ships, and as far as we know, there were at least 9 major Mon Calamar cruisers in that battle, and most likely more. However, 2 of them were destroyed by the Death Star, which is why they flew in between all the Star Destroyers.
Yeah, that's what the Lando Calrissian's idea, because, well, if the Death Star tried to shoot them, it might hit one of the Imperial ships.
Yes, or 2 even.
Yeah.
Oh, and although Mon Calamari shields, I would argue, are the best ship shields in all of Star Wars, even they can't stack up to the Death Star's firepower.
No.
Not even
Because,
to
well, the Death Star, if you look at it, it can destroy a whole planet even with a planetary shield or more.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, what can you do?
Yeah, exactly. Even the Mon Calamari shields can't stand up against that, but they could still take the massive firepower and slugging from the Imperial-class Star Destroyers.
Yes.
Which was pretty massive, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I can't remember. They had, was it 100 Imperial classes? No, not Imperial class, but Imperial classes, Tector classes. What the hell was the other one? Then the one Executor and Allegiance class.
Where?
There is one Allegiance class in the Battle of Endor.
There is?
Yeah.
Well, I've never seen it in the movie, at least, but I haven't actually read... It's a long time since I've properly read through how many ships and what kind of ships were actually in the Battle of Endor. But we are aware that the Tector-class Star Destroyer was exactly the same as an Imperial-class Star Destroyer, except that it did not have a hangar.
Yes.
And neither did the Allegiance class. However, the Allegiance class was 600 meters longer and had another section of its upgoing bridge tower.
Yeah, and also it is a battle cruiser, not a...
Basically, it's an Imperial Star Destroyer on steroids.
Yeah. Even more guns. But, well, it has to have other ship with it because it hadn't any fighters.
Exactly. Exactly the same as a Tector class. So one could actually say that instead of being an Imperial class Star Destroyer on steroids, it's actually a Tector class Star Destroyer on steroids.
I think that would be a better match for it.
Or at least a better, what's it called?
Comparison?
Yeah.
I would have to agree on that because, yeah. You look on the design, then you can see it.
Which is also why I have a feeling that if the MC-90, for example, came up against an Allegiance-class Star Destroyer or battle cruiser, the MC-90 would probably come out on the short end had it not been because of its fighters and bombers.
Yeah. But, well, that is where... the Empire put more interest on the on the capital ships than on their fighters.
Oh, well, yes, they did.
You can see on the TIE Fighter series, most of them are built cheap, without any hyperdrive, without life support, without shielding, nothing. Only the main chassis and some guns.
Yes, and the reason why they had those massive wings was because they were actually solar powered.
Yeah,
they were basically solar powered, so. They had a kind of a battery in them. A battery that could run for this and this long, and so they absorbed those huge wings on both the, well, X-1 TIE Advanced series, you know, Vader's personal ship.
Yes.
The TIE Interceptor, the Bomber, the Fighter, the Defender, I could go on. They all had the same kind of design on the wings because they absorbed all the light rays from stars and suns nearby, and, you know, in general, just got their energy from that. So... In a sense, they could pretty much keep flying forever. But at the same time, they were also short range, because it's kind of limited how much you could have with you in consumables. For example, I think a normal X-Wing had consumables with it that could last for a week.
Yeah, but the TIE Fighter didn't have any.
See? And it could carry, was it 25 kilos of cargo?
Yeah, at maximum.
Which is about 50 pounds, something like it, roughly.
Yeah. But yeah, the TIE Fighter was used for only for defending bigger ships or for patrols.
Yes.
Short patrols.
Yes, and later on the TIE Interceptor was used for the same purpose.
Yeah, but the TIE Interceptor was of course faster.
Oh yes, it was one of the things that the X-Wing pilots really feared.
Yeah, because the TIE Fighter was of course designed shortly after the Clone Wars.
Yes.
Was then being mass-produced, then the Rebel Alliance began to hit back with, like, X-Wings.
Z-95 Starfighters first, and then X-Wings later on, yeah.
Yeah. Then the Empire saw, oh shit, our fighters cannot fight them. We need a better one. Then they designed the TIE Interceptor.
Oh yes, but the X-Wings and such also had their drawbacks, because the fighter both had hyperdrive, shields, life supports, and everything. But the problem was that it was also much bigger.
Yeah, and heavier, but, well, with shields and everything, I would say that outweighs the disadvantage.
Oh, definitely. But the TIE Fighter was still more maneuverable, don't forget that.
That is true, but, well, we can also see on the Imperial pilots, freshly trained, no combat experience really,
Mm-hmm.
died within a week or so.
Something like it. Almost like the Battle of Britain.
Yeah. We can also see that on, was it this TIE Defender, the better version, of course, where it has to, what's it called? Every pilot that had survived 10 missions in a TIE Interceptor was qualified enough to fly the Defender.
Yes, but if other pilots who had survived more were also in line, then of course they were picked first.
Yeah, of course.
Mm.
But, well, they didn't really have a high survival rating.
No, actually the TIE Defender did, but then again they
Yeah.
also had life support systems, shields, and hyperdrive.
Yeah, but I meant the TIE Fighter and TIE Interceptor.
Mm. Well, the TIE Interceptor was still better than the normal TIE Fighter.
That is true. That is really true.
Mm. Faster, more maneuverable, and twice the firepower.
Yeah, but more expensive also, which the Empire not really liked.
That is true. But
They are not that happy about cost.
I don't know about what to say about that one though with the Star Destroyers.
Well, the Star Destroyers are also cheaply made. You can just look at what was it called, Force Unleashed.
Mm-hmm.
They use scrap metal to build the Imperial classes.
Well, actually, it's a pretty good idea. The idea in itself is good. It's just not the best materials that they use.
No.
But yeah, it's on the scrap planet of Raxus Prime.
Yes.
So where they recycle all ship debris and everything, and all the metal from there is run through a furnace, and then basically you could say, and no pun intended here, but you could actually say that Star Destroyers are made from scratch.
Yeah. That's actually a good point of it.
Yeah, but actually no pun intended, for once.
Yeah. But well, there are of course some flaws, but indirect, I would also say the Imperial class is not a bad design when we look on it that way.
From a practical standpoint, it is a terrible design, but from a whoa, that is an awesome ship kind of view, then it's one of the best ones out there.
Yeah, it was effective for its time.
Oh, definitely.
But we can also see that without the commander, without the resources to refuel them and resupply them, they are not the best because they use a huge crew.
Oh yes, they do. They have very few automated systems.
Yes, that of course they could probably change. Probably.
Oh, they could change it easily, but I guess it was too expensive of an investment in the beginning, and
Yeah.
so let's see.
But also you can also say that the Imperial class could be on a voyage for pretty long because it had enough consumables for what was it, 6 months? No, 6 years on the Imperial 2.
An Imperial class. No, that was an Imperial 1.
Was that an Imperial 1? Well, the 2 was then what? Was that double or was it 8 years?
I think that was actually only 2 years.
I can't remember.
Let's see here what our good old friend Wikipedia actually says about the Star Destroyer now that we're at it. Yeah, the Imperial Class 1, 6 years of consumables and cargo capacity of 36,000 tons.
That's quite a lot.
Actually, if you look at it, it's not too much.
Nah, probably not, but
the
being
Rebel,
away for 6 years is pretty long time.
That's true, but if you look at the Rebel transports that you see everywhere, you know, those kind of, I don't even know how to explain the design of them, but they're named GR-75.
The container transport.
I mean, they in themselves had a... there was the right tab. They themselves could carry up to 19,000 metric tons, which is just over half of what the Imperial class could carry, and an Imperial class was 1,600 meters long, whereas the GR-75 transport is only 90 meters long.
Yeah, okay, but well, you could also look at the Imperial class compared to the GR-75. It is a warship, not a transporter.
That is very true.
So you have to make compromises to make this so that the ship can still fulfill its main role, which is of course combat.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
of course you can't have all the what's it called? Throw all the weapons away and just use it for cargo, because then, well, you have a big cargo ship.
Oh yes, and the Imperial Star Destroyer would definitely be great for that.
They would be great for that because of their big size.
And I'm just looking at the Venator here now. The Venator can carry 20,000 tons of cargo and has consumables for 2 years. However, the 2 years worth of consumables is pretty damn average and standard for Star Wars ships in general. And that applies both to Republic ships, to most Imperial ships, to New Republic ships, and to Rebel Alliance ships. I mean, it's pretty similar.
Yeah, there's not that big a difference, you can say.
Not on that point.
Oh, so that's quite normal then.
Yeah, but I also think it's got something to do with the fact that they had to standardize something.
Yeah, you can see on if we go into Legends and look at the New Republic ships, they made their ships smaller, but still quite powerful, but also so that they didn't have to be away that long.
Oh yes, I mean, looking at the Nebula class, for example, which was pretty much the ultimate culmination of the new class fleet program that came out in 15 ABY, it only carried consumables for 6 months.
Yeah.
And about 15,000 tons worth of cargo, if I'm not mistaken. I actually made a video on that one against the MC-90. And that is definitely a drawback for the Nebula class, if you look at it this way, that it can't carry very many things because it's so small. So it's not good for prolonged engagements. And it quickly has to go back to one of the allied planets and refuel and restock and everything. But in a combat scenario, for example, that thing is a lean, mean fighting machine.
Yeah, because it is a culmination, as you said. It has the new, most advanced sensors, weapons, probably also the best fighters at that point.
Yeah, and it could actually carry a fair amount of fighters, and we know that hangar space, especially fighter carrying capacity, is something that really takes up a lot of space in a ship.
Yep.
So, and actually it could carry, was it 36 fighters? Something like it?
Yeah, and it was, what was it, 500 meters shorter than the Imperial class?
1,040 meters, I think. So it was almost 100 meters shorter than a Venator even.
Yeah.
So, but again, even the Nebula had its drawbacks. I mean...
Of course, every ship has to sacrifice something.
Yes, and in this case it was prolonged combat ability. It could only go to a battle, quickly finish the job, and go back again.
Yeah, but also the Nebula class is also a pocket class Star Destroyer, a smaller version of a normal Star Destroyer.
Yes, and even though the Nebula was much smaller, it was actually much more powerful than an Imperial class 2.
Yeah, but well, it was built to match one Imperial class 2 in one-on-one engagement.
Oh yes.
Or smaller ships.
It was actually built to match it and defeat it.
Yes.
In a one-on-one engagement.
Yeah, but it can also take on smaller ships, of course, in a bigger amount. But one-on-one, it can match and defeat an Imperial class too.
Yes, just like the MC-90.
Yes. But back to the Imperial class. Well, at that time, the Imperial used it. I think they used it for quite good, actually.
Yes, they did.
For their time.
Yes, they used them the way they were supposed to be used most of the time. And in general, they really did fulfill their role. I mean, they were huge, they were massive, they had tons of firepower, they had a nice number of fighters, although the fighters in themselves could be better. But they had a nice complement of fighters still, and in all general terms and aspects, a Imperial class is actually a fairly good ship and a really awesome design, but it just has some terrible cons that really weighs it down.
Yeah, but well, you can also say that the person designing the Imperial class was not the best designer in the universe.
Oh no, that is true.
And that is Lyra Blissix, the daughter of Valix. I can't remember his name right now. The person that finished the Victory 1 Star Destroyer. and also the Republic class Star Destroyer later on in the New Republic era.
Yeah, the Republic class Star Destroyer.
Yeah,
Beautiful ship.
she of course got most of the ideas from his Victory design for the Imperial class, but made it bigger and that. But well, she has made some flaws in it. But she also designed the Executor.
Oh yes,
Also some flaws in it.
definitely. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter which ship it is. Every ship will have its cons, and every ship will have its pros. And in all honesty, they're all really, really good. I think a lot of the ships in Star Wars are really good and really epic and really strong. It mostly just depends on how they're being used. And if you use an Imperial Star Destroyer correct, I would even argue that there is no better ship for direct frontal assault.
No, you can also see in Legends when the Republic finally the Rebellion defeated and was transcending into the New Republic. When they defeated the Empire, they actually stole quite a lot of the Imperial classes, both from shipyards and from combat, or repaired some. They used them quite a lot actually, because well, the Rebellion was in a state where they just had to take what they could.
Oh yes, and even in the starting years of the New Republic, but they also knew that this couldn't go on because, I mean, how would you expect it if say, there's someone you really don't like, almost say like, if we take a political party for example, if you take them and they use some of the tactics that you really don't agree with, for example, I'm not very fond of capitalism myself, neither am I of communism, but that's another story. The fact of the matter is, they use some tactics to get this, but then the ones you're rooting for are pretty much using the same tactics and the same equipment. I mean, what kind of an impression do you get from that? You get a very negative impression of it, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. They briefly had to do something, which is also why the new class fleet modernization program was formed. And
yeah, it was formed too because they could see, well, we have too many different types of ships. We need a unification system so that we can use our own ships now.
Yes, and the good thing about all the Imperial class Star Destroyers, and even some of the components in the 1s and 2s, were the same. So if you needed a component for an Imperial class Star Destroyer, then you could just salvage from somewhere else. But taking, for example, the MC-80 Home 1 or Liberty classes, for example, each of those ships were individual. So every time you had to get a component, you had to have a component made especially for that one ship. Something that they, of course, did fix around the time where the MC-90 came out. But even the MC-80B, which was also a really powerful ship in its own right, which could just about match an Imperial Class 2 Star Destroyer, also had that same problem. It had the same Achilles heel. I mean, sure, it does offer you great advantages to have a ship that is individual each time, because some of the corridors in the ship are laid out differently, some of the vital components are put in different places, so it confuses the enemy every time. Whereas if you know one Venator or one Star Destroyer, you know them all.
Yeah, because of their what is it called, standardized design.
And that's the thing. Individuality is really good in the right amount, but a streamlined design that is the same all the way through, like a mass production, for example, that is also really good. But once again, it depends on the context.
Yeah, but well, the Empire is coming directly from the Republic, which at that point was, of course, fighting the Clone Wars, where they had more or less just streamlined production because, well, Kuat was one of the main producers, at least for the of capital ships.
Oh, they were the main producer.
Yeah. And they hit. Normally, Kuat is also known to just streamline their production because it's easy.
But also we know that Kuat is very, very effective and very good at what they do.
They are one of the top what's it called, shipbuilding companies in Star Wars, and had been that for many years.
Oh yes, the only one that is bigger is CEC, Corellian Engineering Corporation. But they don't really make so many military vessels. They make a lot more like freighters, fighters, luxury ships. You know, they make a lot more smaller ships, and so they actually got a bigger profit and had more sales than Kuat drive yards. But Kuat just made much bigger, much more heavy, and much more powerful ships.
Yeah, but also Kuat was more for the what can you call it, the wealthy sectors in the universe. Because, like, if you look at their they made most of their ships for defensive purpose of defending a star system. Like the Mandator is one of the best examples because they were just huge at the time they were built, and they were built to defend a whole star system.
Oh yes, a single Mandator 1 class could stand up to a fleet, and that's basically also what the Executor was meant to do, which it could.
Yeah, you can look at the Executor like at the next generation of Mandator from that time.
Basically, yeah.
Because they, well, you can also kind of see the influence they both had on each other.
It's pretty obvious to see.
Yeah. But of course we also have to think that most of the designers through Star Wars try to keep the ships more or less not formally, but so they look like each other.
Yeah, they
I can't remember what it's called.
They tried to make them identical.
Identical, yes. So that people could also see, like, Kuat, they use mostly the T-shaped command towers that we see on the Imperial and Executor. But the Mandator also used that. At least the Mandator 1 and 2. And the Mandator 3 probably also, because there's no pictures of it. So, no idea.
No. Yeah.
But yes, I think we can all agree. The Imperial class, a good design for its time, and good for its role, but had some of the really big flaws.
And it definitely served out its purpose in the best way it could, with the flaws that it had to go with it.
Of course, every ship, of course, has some flaws.
Everyone does.
Yes.
Because
if you look back at the Venator, you can look. It had a huge hangar, but how did you get into that hangar?
Yeah, you could go through the bottom of the ship, but that would take too much time. Or you could go through the 2 hangars on the sides, which also took too much time.
Yes.
Or you could open up the entire front of the Venator, but the problem was that then you exposed a major weak spot, and a few proton torpedoes would go right through and basically blow the ship up.
Yes. So, some problems, of course. Imperial class, well, it has not the same weakness, but, well, put a big nuclear bomb inside its belly, you have destroyed the whole ship.
Yeah, actually, you could do it on just one of the little side hangars that it has.
Yeah. You can also see, if you take one look at the Rebels, they actually show a scene where they are saving one of their friends from Tarkin's personal Star Destroyer, and just blow the whole thing up with just destroying the power reactor.
But that's something you generally see. I mean, you also see that in Clone Wars, where a few thermal detonators inside the main reactor of the Venator actually crippled the whole ship. Asajj Ventress did that when they had captured Newt Gunray.
Yeah, they crippled the Venator, but here the whole Star Destroyer actually blew up.
Wow. Well, that speaks volumes about me and not having seen Rebels. Only season 1.
Yeah, you should probably try watch the last just to get a hint what is going on in the new.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's good for comic relief.
It is. I would say so. Rebels, not a terrible show I have seen, but I wish they had finished Clone Wars.
Oh yes, me too. But one of the things that I really liked about Rebels, though, was especially the comic relief, because their kind of humor just really applied to me. For example, in the episode where they stole a TIE fighter, Ezra and Zep.
Yeah, that one is really good.
For example, and Hera and Kanan's reaction, like, "You did what?" I mean, some of those kind of reactions, they just really apply to me. I don't know why. It may just be my humor that is twisted, but at the same time, the things that I really don't like about Rebels is the design of the Star Destroyer, because the bridge tower is way too tall on those animations of the Star Destroyer there.
Yeah, that is really crazy.
It is. I'm sorry to say it, but it's terrible.
Well, I would say it just makes it a lot worse. Because, well, the Imperial design is already so on the edge, I would say, how it looks. But then they make that one stunt, and it's just like, whoa.
Yeah, that's a bit overkill.
Yeah. And well, I would not say it annoys me not that much, but I'm pretty sure most fans can agree that it doesn't look that fantastic.
It looks better when it's not that tall.
Yeah, it just kind of... They should have stick to the old movies to see how an Imperial design was.
Mm-hmm.
Because the new design they have made for Rebels, no way.
Mm-hmm. But also making them that much taller just makes them a bigger target. And actually makes them even easier to kill.
That is true, but, well, you could always argue that that maybe is an early design of the Imperial class. Like, they have also shown the AT-80 in Rebels, and that is not the one we see in, like, Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back.
On half.
But, yeah, but this is more like an early design. Like we see in the old, what they called, comic books and that for Clone Wars, where we also see some early AT-AT walkers on the Battle of Jabim, if everyone knows that. Yeah,
or at least they can read about it, now they have the title of it.
Yeah. There you see some, and they look more like the real AT-AT. Those in Rebels, I would not say they look really good enough.
There are some things that are about iffy, especially about the design. Not that neither Lars or I could do it any better, but comparing that to some of the other designs from, for example, the movies or the comics or just even the Clone Wars TV show, then there are things that are definitely lacking.
Yes. So. But, well, as Chris just said, we can't really make much changes because we are not animators or designers in any way.
Also, it takes a crazy amount of skill to be able to actually make those shows.
Yes. And hats off to the creators.
Definitely. Definitely hats off for them. So. Well, you know what? I think we should finish it off for now.
Yeah, I think we have talked too much.
Yeah, we probably haven't. We got onto quite a few detours around the around this almost 1 hour span.
Damn.
56 minutes. Almost 57.
Well, then I think we should say goodbye.
Yes, for now at least. At least until we find another discussion topic.
Yes.
Alright then. Well, everyone, take care, and may the Force be with you as always.
Yes, take care.